We're watching scenes from Le Sacre du Printemps, or the Rite of Spring, a seminal artistic creation of the 20th century. We're going to look at one other scene here of the Joffrey Ballet's reconstruction of Václav Nijinsky's original choreography from 1913. Imagine that you were in Paris on the night of May 29th, 1913, preparing to experience this brand new ballet presented by Sergei Diaghilev and his world-famous Ballet Russe. It was the talk of the town in Paris. Brand new music by Igor Stravinsky, the young Russian composer. Brand new choreography by Václav Nijinsky. New sets and costumes by the eminent artist Alexander Roerich. It was one of the most amazing nights in cultural history. You entered the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées, walking through this very modern lobby with its metal and glass, not really quite prepared for what you were about to experience. As you entered into the concert hall, you sat with all of your fellow patrons and wondered exactly what was going to happen. The first thing you hear is a solo by a woodwind instrument, but at first almost unrecognizable. Of course, it's the bassoon, in the highest part of its register on the instrument, a solo that has come to be one of the most famous and actually one of the most infamous in the entire repertoire. Every bassoonist now learns it, and it's one of the fundamental bassoon solos in all of the orchestral repertoire. But at the time Stravinsky wrote it, it was something very different than anything that had ever been heard before. In fact, that whole performance on May 29th, 1913 was one of the most notorious events in all of Western cultural history. It actually created what we call now a riot. As the music began and the ballet that you've seen snippets of began, it was unlike anything anybody had ever seen or heard before. And people began to shout derisive comments, snide remarks, and then people began to shout in response, some people in support. And apparently it got louder and louder until all of these shoutings and comments were actually drowning out all of the music. And yet the dancers continued. Nijinsky was shouting orders from the backstage, telling the dancers what to do next. I mean, you can imagine what a kind of chaotic scene this was. And the music continued, and the entire ballet went on. And then finally, everybody spilled out into the street and continued this enormous discussion. It really was a riot. Can you imagine something like that happening today after a concert? I can't, but maybe it could. While this was music written by Stravinsky for a ballet, the amazing thing about this score is that it completely transcends the visual images connected to a ballet, and it's taken on its own life as a concert piece. If we go back to this amazing opening, the bassoon, what Stravinsky does is then add different characters. The individual instruments in and of themselves become individual characters as they begin a discussion with each other. We hear the French horn enter. Clarinets. The bassoon repeats its figure. We hear the bass clarinet down beneath. And now the English horn. Gradually, each of these characters come to join the overall orchestral sonority. Another passage, seemingly coming from centuries before, that I really love is this one, where we have a slow, ponderous accompaniment. Over which Stravinsky places this beautiful singing tune. And suddenly, the same music in a massive orchestral sound. While there are many aspects of this amazing score that excite me, one of the things that I love the most is the rhythmic interplay, the way Stravinsky pits different parts of the orchestra against each other. Let's hear in this section how the bass instruments, especially leading with the percussion, the bass drum, the timpani, coupled with the basses, tubas, trombones, bassoons, play kind of a game of oompa, oompa pa, oompa, only in a kind of uneven rhythm with the rest of the orchestra. But first, 11 famous notes in all of music. One of the basic aspects of Stravinsky's technique as a composer is to take little tiny cells of material, maybe just 1, 2, or 3 notes. It can be a little scale, it can be a rhythmic pattern, and then he plays around with them. He'll repeat them. He'll put them on top of each other in different instruments. He'll make them go at different speeds in different ways. He'll turn them upside down. He'll create what are called ostinatos, which is a repeating pattern over and over again. He'll use the notes to create unusual harmonies. These same basic little cells form the nucleus of almost the entire composition, from that opening bassoon solo to the heavy percussion and timpani we just heard. And in this final section of the piece, we hear this most crystallized. We hear the timpani playing all of these downbeats and the rest of the orchestra responding, sometimes with 1 note, sometimes with 2. And we hear this very clear delineation between the percussive rhythm, the response of the woodwinds and the strings, and then this amazing little crescendo of the brass. And it all happens very quickly, but he repeats the whole cycle, like this. In all of these instrumental colors, what we just finished listening to, those scoops, the glissandos of the trombones, the strength of the powerful timpani, the French horns, all of this incredible orchestral color has the effect of being very modern, which of course it was and still is even 100 years later, but it still feels this primordial connection to something that happened millennia before. And that's, I think, one of the most powerful aspects of this piece is how Stravinsky tried to bridge these long periods of time, connecting old Russian folklore with the present-day environment in Paris and still reaching towards the future. That's why this piece continues to resonate for all of us as performers, as audience members, still 100 years after its premiere. Of course, all of these little snippets, all of these images are nothing like the incredible experience of hearing this piece performed live. I hope you'll all join us, the Richmond Symphony, in all of the full symphonic splendor of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. We'll see you there.